The question is, do you agree that Scotland should be an independent country?
For me, the principle that we work best when we work together.
Well, they didn't.
Very serious.
The referendum. It seems to me that they're not dealing with the issues.
Hello, this is Scottish Independence podcast number 94, and this time I spoke to Philippa Whitford. I'm sure you've seen her videos explaining what's going to happen to the NHS in the event of a no vote, and we talked about that, but we also talked about many other things. So we'll just go straight to the conversation, and I'll have a wee word with you at the end. Hi Philippa, how's it going?
Fine. Just got in from Aberdeen. We were speaking up there last night, so that's us. We've gone through the 5,000 mile barrier now in the last 4.5 months, so the cars are both needing a bit of help, I think.
Yeah, it's been incredible. A lot of people involved in the campaigning and the activism have talked about how there was a spell where it went slowly, and then all of a sudden just quick, and we're right here, right now, and it seems quite amazing at the moment.
Absolutely. I mean, I got actively involved last March, so a year and a half ago, when we set up Yes Troon, and there was a tiny handful of us at that time. Now there's a whole crowd. And it just seemed to be, 2 years, a year and a half. And then all of a sudden, just before the summer, people were talking about, we should make a video, we should do this. And suddenly people realizing, it's too late for that. We don't have time for that. And then we've suddenly had people waking up after the kids went back to school. You know, summer's out of the way, Commonwealth Games are out of the way. And suddenly people are going, right, okay, what is this about? And whoosh, the last 6 weeks have just gone in a flash.
Yeah. How are you feeling after all this weekend there's an amazing event in Glasgow with thousands of people. I've seen some of the photos from Aberdeen today. There were thousands of people all around. There was a samba band marching through Rutherglen, and there's been an amazing amount of stuff, but there's also been, the Orange March, I suppose, on the other side. But I mean, what do you think of just the level of activity around this at the moment?
Having travelled to so many sort of corners of Scotland and seen people organising things and developing skill sets they didn't have before to organise a meeting, set up live stream, start a blog, write a paper, the sheer engagement everywhere has been incredible. And obviously this weekend has been, in a way, allowing people to just, what we're doing today is we're just getting together and showing our sheer joy and belief in an independent Scotland. And I feel a wee bit envious because I've missed out on a lot of the flash mobs and things like that because I've just always been on the road. But of course, I've been watching them online and they do lift your spirits. And I think particularly after all the attack last weekend from big business and multinationals telling us the sky will fall and, a chasm will open up under Scotland, etc. This is people showing back, you've been saying boo for 2 years. You don't scare us.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Do you think that the arrival of Cameron and Miliband and Clegg is going to have the effect that Westminster desires? Because I'm not entirely convinced it will.
I'm not at all convinced it will. I mean, it was the same. There was a chap just the week before trying to, when they were doing the review of the headlines on the BBC, asking Penny Smith and another journalist to comment when it had got to sort of 47-53, and they were totally dismissive of it. And then all of a sudden we had the poll at 51-49, and we had all sorts of heavyweights, whether political or journalistic, coming up to Scotland, obviously having not the slightest clue as to what this is all about, and coming out with just really inane statements. And all those MPs from England coming off the bus or coming off the train, I mean, they just looked lost.
Did you see the guy following him round playing the Empire Strikes Back music at him?
I haven't seen it, but I've heard of it, and I'm looking forward to seeing it on the internet. Unfortunately, because I've just literally been on wheels for the last 4.5 months, I hardly get to see anything. I just hear about it through the grapevine. But well done to him.
I particularly enjoyed Prescott in the pub trying to be one of the lads. And it just makes me think of, him taking his second Jaguar 75 yards because he didn't want to get his wife's hair messed up, or his wife didn't want to get her hair messed up. That's real man of the people stuff there.
Oh, for sure. I mean, but equally, he couldn't quite resist attacking the Tories and, drawing attention to the fact that the Labour Party is currently hand in hand with the Tories in trying to avoid people in Scotland voting for self-determination, which is all we're asking for. We're not going to plant charges across the border and sail off into the Atlantic. We simply want to make decisions for ourselves here. It's a very uncomfortable place, and particularly for MPs and MSPs up here who are having to play down Tory policies and agree with things that are absolutely against the principle of the Labour Party. And I think they will find it very hard to recover from that afterwards.
Well, that's exactly one of the reasons I asked you onto the show, because one of the things that they're having to do up here is to pretend that everything's fine with the NHS down south, but down south they're actually protesting about it. We're getting two very different stories north and south of the border, which is not the first time that's happened, but it's possibly the most important issue with which it's happened. And you said earlier that you got involved with Yes Troon a while ago, but I suppose most people know you from the video you made speaking about what's happening to the NHS. But in case anyone haven't seen that, could you explain for the listeners what exactly is the problem with the NHS if Scotland votes no?
Well, there's now a whole load of videos of different speeches, so there's a bit of a box set probably available. But the bottom line of it is simply that I had been following the changes that were happening down south through my interest as someone who works for the NHS in kind of sheer disbelief at what they seem to be doing, and then gradually realising the impact this would have on us. So south of the border, the NHS is being broken up, it's being franchised out to private companies like Virgin, Atos, Serco, Care UK, and every single new contract must be put out to tender between the NHS and these private companies. And what is also happening is gradually rationing what is available, pushing people towards paying charges round the edge of the NHS, and gradually pushing people on this journey towards paying for their healthcare or taking private insurance. And the problem is that will have an effect on us, both in that the way we are funded at the moment is we get a share of what they spend. So if patients are paying for it, the government will eventually spend less and we will get less. But also, I just don't find it realistic when their patients have to pay over £8 an item for prescription charges and are gradually going to be pushed to pay for their healthcare, possibly suggestions of up to £25 to go and see a GP. The idea that in 5 or 10 years, money will be happily sent up so that we can keep our free prescriptions and free NHS, that just is incredible. And south of the border, people like Michael Meacher and Andy Burnham are literally jumping up and down saying that the NHS is in a cliff edge and it will be gone in 5 years. Up here, nothing in our media, nothing in our papers or on the television, and our Labour MPs and MSPs say, oh, no, the NHS is fine, it's safe, it's devolved, don't you worry your pretty little heads about it. I mean, it just isn't realistic.
How long do you think after a no vote we would start to see the Scottish NHS in serious difficulty?
Well, I think that would come relatively quickly. I mean, George Osborne already announced quite some time ago that there is another 25 billion of austerity cuts to come. What we've gone through is only 15 billion. So you're talking much more than what we've already faced. Now, a chunk of that will be on welfare. And we know how that went first time around. Mm-hmm. We know, obviously, our government has been trying to mitigate some of the worst excesses of that, particularly, obviously, the bedroom tax. But that would probably take about 2 billion or more out of our funding. I think the Barnett formula definitely has a target painted on its back, and these minimal tax changes that they would allow will be used as an excuse to get rid of Barnett. And therefore, it will be simply put to us, you want to keep free prescriptions, you want to keep a free NHS, put taxes up in Scotland. And therefore, while people talk about, taxes might end up going up in an independent Scotland, if we wanted to keep the public services we value at the moment, they would definitely end up rising if we vote no.
So if we vote yes, it's not only a case of maintaining what we have. If we had the full control over our NHS and our funding. How do you think we could improve the NHS in Scotland to make it even better than it is?
Well, one of the biggest problems that we actually have in Scotland is not specifically within the NHS. It's actually our public health. It's our poor general health. We're often described as the sick man of Europe. And a lot of that relates to things like poverty and deprivation. And you can't solve that unless you can actually get people out of poverty. Whereas poverty rates, and particularly child poverty, has actually been increasing in Scotland. We're at a level where a quarter of our children are living in poverty. That's an absolute disgrace, and that's going to lead to ill health and blighted lives and poor life chances for those children as they grow up. And we'll be trying to tackle that in another 10 or 20 years. So unless you control the kind of economy and can try to stimulate work and get people into work that pays a living wage, you can never actually get rid of this underlying ill health. What you can do specifically for the NHS is obviously there would be things we wouldn't spend money on, like invading other countries or huge expense on replacing Trident. What you would choose is to spend more money on your public services. And that would allow us to do things like we do need to develop our primary care better. We particularly need more GP support in the poorest areas. And we do need to tackle mental health. That's a bit of a Cinderella corner within the NHS and is something that ends up leading to a lot of other social problems and other physical ill health as well. So we would be able to commit a bit more money to it, but also try and in the long term tackle the underlying things that generate so much of our expensive ill health in the first place.
So it's a case of putting more money into prevention rather than cure?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, just to go back to the budget thing, sometimes people have a difficulty in visualising what comes when people start to talk about budgets and different taxes and things like that, and people find it quite hard to visualise. And I was trying to think of a kind of visual metaphor for this. And just to run it by you, do you think this is a fair case of what's happening to the NHS? And you can tell me if it's not. But imagine you're in a room and I give you 4 bottles of water and tell you to give everyone a drink. You've got independence on how you wish to distribute that water to everyone, or on the basis of need, or on the basis of their weight. I don't know, just whatever the example. But next year I give you 3 bottles and tell you you can distribute the water how you like to everyone. You've not got enough water to give around. Next year I give you 2 bottles. But you've still got the independence to give the water to who you like. Simplistic, I know, but is that a fair kind of metaphor for what the danger that's going to come?
Absolutely. I mean, we control how we spend the money up here once it comes. The formula is that we get a 10% share of what is spent on public services south of the border. But we can then move that money around. And so if we want to protect health, we are stealing from education, which means that you are undermining your attempts at preventing poor outcomes and life chances for young people in the future. So we can move the stuff around, but even under this pathetic devolved powers that they talk about giving us, all the lucrative taxes will still go to Westminster. So oil revenues will go to Westminster, petrol and alcohol duty, VAT, corporation tax, and in particularly the next energy boom, which will be the renewable energy, and the Crown Estate money from marine energy built around our coast will all still just go to Westminster. Whereas if that was coming to us, the harder we work, the more we stimulate our economy, we can actually say, well, we've managed to generate 5 bottles of water. And therefore we can be a little bit more generous with people. And that's what we don't have. We don't have the ability to expand the purse and have more money to divvy up, and indeed to invest in the future. And that's the problem we have. We can share it out, but we don't get control over how big the purse is in the first place.
Yeah, didn't you find it interesting that with all the various Devo something proposals, not one of them proposed the transfer of oil revenues, not one of them. And from the way that they've been behaving, talking about this volatile resource that's running out and is a burden on Scotland, you think that at least one of the offers would consider devolving that to Scotland, but strangely no.
Well, I think not terribly strange. Why do you think they're working so hard to keep a hold of us? If we're a bunch of kept subsidy junkies who can't stand on our own 2 feet,